Greetings to all, and welcome to the Jamaica Diaspora Show. My name is Mark Millward of the West Indian Social Club of Hartford, and I'm your host. The Jamaica Diaspora Show is aimed at providing viewers with coverage of diaspora news and activities in a variety of areas, including business, arts, health, education, entertainment, politics, immigration, trade, and investment. Our first show featured an exclusive interview with the Most Honorable Andrew P. Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, who talked about the Economic Growth Council and harnessing the power of the diaspora. Tune in for more coverage in the future on the activities of the Economic Growth Council and diaspora engagement. Hartford, Connecticut is the third largest population of Jamaicans in the United States, behind Miami and New York. We intend to provide our viewing audience with global diaspora perspectives and coverage from the US, UK, Canada, Jamaica, and of course the Caribbean. Please join us weekly, Saturdays at 2 p.m. and Sundays at 3 p.m. on Hartford Public Access Television, providing global television network coverage at www.hpatv.org. Greetings and welcome to the Jamaica Diaspora Show. My name is Mark Millward, and I am here with my very special guest, Dr. Claire Nelson.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
We are on location, ladies and gentlemen, in Kingston, Jamaica, at the Jamaica Diaspora Conference, Jamaica Diaspora Conference 55. How are you enjoying the conference?
Well, it's a great opportunity for me to network with people who live around the country. Occasionally we meet up in different places in New York or Los Angeles, especially during Caribbean American Heritage Month, and certainly on the phone. So it's nice to meet up with old friends and to make new connections as we continue to spread our message in the United States.
Now, Dr. Nelson, you are known. Well, first I want to get a little bit further into your background. You are, by education...
Well, I'm an engineer. I'm a futurist and I'm an engineer. But I'm a true Jamaican, so I couldn't stop at 2 jobs. I have 4 jobs. So I'm a futurist, a sustainability engineer. I also consider myself a social entrepreneur because of the work I do in the community. And as a personal vocation, I'm a storyteller.
You are definitely a storyteller. Certainly, we're very honored to have this opportunity to speak with you. You are the person that's responsible for the Caribbean Month.
Yes, National Caribbean American Heritage Month is the outcome of work that we have been doing for many years. And we're delighted that in 2006 it was officially proclaimed in the US, and we're delighted that we have managed to survive a 3rd presidential change. Yeah, so Caribbean American Heritage Month, as you might know, but your listeners won't know, was officially proclaimed in June 6, 2006. It was like a 7-year journey to get to that point.
Okay.
And so we're delighted again from the Bush administration to the Obama administration, and now for the Trump administration, we have made it. We made it through because he did sign the proclamation where he did sign others. So we're very excited that it was signed.
Now, you are also the president founder of ICS. Can you tell us what about ICS?
Yes, so the Institute of Caribbean Studies, commonly known as ICS, was founded back in 1993 by a group of young Turks led by me in order to provide a voice for Caribbean young professionals at the time to begin to engage the status quo in Washington, D.C. We recognized at the time it was the Reagan era that there were lots of pundits talking about the Caribbean and none of them were Caribbean. We also recognized that there was a flaw in the way Caribbean organizations were organized. They were mostly social organizations. And there was no means by which we could engage the power of either, let's say, the U.S. Leadership, as well as also even our governments. At the time, I worked at the Inter-American Development Bank, and I was very familiar with some of the development challenges because I worked on Caribbean issues. And so we'd be very frustrated when I found my young friends complaining and they being frustrated, and I thought, what if we were able to tap into all the meetings that would happen in Washington, D.C. when the ministers are in town, which I knew about because I would always be around that, and borrow them to talk to the diaspora. So that's how we began to get engaged. And so in 1993 we had our first convening meeting, and by 1994 we organized the first Caribbean Economic Symposium in June, which was tagged on to what was then the World Bank Caribbean Group for Economic Cooperation and Development. And so because of that, from day one, we were able to get the participation of people like the then Minister of Finance of Barbados, the then Trade Commissioner for Jamaica, and the then Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. So we had a really robust start from day one.
Okay. Now, you are also involved with the new legislation for diaspora involvement.
So last year when we found out that Congressman Engel had written this bill to demand that the U.S. pay attention to the Caribbean region, and do so by having a law that says the Department must have a strategic agenda shared with Congress that governs a 3-year agenda. And we were delighted, especially that he wrote into that bill, the diaspora, civil society, including the diaspora, should be consulted. Now, we have been doing events on Capitol Hill since 1999. We consider our mentor to be Congresswoman Donna Christensen, because she was the first congressperson to host us on the Hill. Congresswoman Barbara Lee is the congressperson we worked with for Caribbean American Heritage Month, and more recently, since Congresswoman Yvette Clarke has basically become the voice of the Caribbean community because she has such a large Caribbean American voting bloc. And we've also been working with her office. So those three, in a sense, were our triumvirate. And so once we found out about that, and once the bill was signed into law in December by President Obama, we recognized that despite the seeming uncertainty around the Trump administration, we had a legal opportunity, and indeed an obligation and privilege, to use that bill to really ensure that the Caribbean did not miss whatever opportunities might exist, despite the change in waves in U.S. foreign policy. And so, because we already had a relationship with State Department, ICS already had been selected by State Department as a diaspora partner. I myself became a White House champion of change because of the State Department putting my name forward. So I know I already had that level of access into State Department personally and organizationally. So with that, we were able to convene a meeting with State Department in February, and then we asked them to host a public briefing in March, where we would put together a paper along the same lines in which they were going to organize their thinking and present our findings, that this would fulfill their obligation to have a diaspora engagement. So it worked out exactly that way. We were able to get about, I think, 40 people show up in Washington in March. It was a very small meeting, was intentionally small. At that time, we shared with them our what was then called a draft non-paper, and basically they were very, I guess, in favor of what we said and suggested that we officially launch our paper after they launched their paper as the Diaspora Companion Paper to the State Department report. So our document is now considered the diaspora consultation outcome, and as fully fulfilling the requirements of the law. And out of that, we have proposed that there be regional consultations. There'll be one in New York, hopefully in September, and we're looking at a quarterly consultation at different points around the country. And we'll be working with our partners around the country, around the U.S., the country in the U.S. that is, to make sure that happens.
All right. Now, what is the bill called? What is it? It's HR.
It's HR 4939. That's
4939?
Or House Resolution, and then once it became a law, it's Public Law 1142291, I believe.
And ICS is actually leading the effort to operationalize, as you would say.
Well, we are leading the diaspora part of it. So the bill requires that the U.S. Department, State Department, and AID consult with civil society, including private sector organizations and diaspora. The Caribbean Central American Action is the leading Caribbean private sector organization based in Washington. So they are the de facto go-to person for the State Department as representing the Caribbean private sector. ICS is a leading Caribbean American advocacy organization in Washington, D.C. And so we are the de facto go-to organization for the State Department when it comes to diaspora engagement.
Well, ISC has quite a few initiatives. You have, well, first off, you started out with the Caribbean American Heritage Month. You have the awards. You have investment conferences.
Yes.
Can you talk to, you have Caribbean Vision 20, can you talk to us about some of these special initiatives?
Well, we are 24 years old, so we've been around a long time. And we were started on the premise that we would become an advocacy and development. We're started on the premise that I, as a development practitioner, wanted to see Caribbean people move from complaining and charity giving to development investment. And so that notion of, first of all, creating the space for our voices to be heard, creating awareness among Caribbean community leaders, and it's nice that they're doing their one-off scholarships, and it's nice that they're doing their football clubs, but we need to move from just that to advocating. And there's a sort of a myth that says, well, I'm a 501c3, therefore I cannot get involved in politics. The U.S. democracy allows every single civil society organization up to 15% of its time focusing on advocacy for its interests. Otherwise, the democracy cannot function. So every U.S. organization is allowed to advocate at your local level, your state level, your federal level, without registering as a lobbyist. So first, that's the first shift we have to get people to understand.
Is ICS 501c?
We're a 501c3 education organization. So we're not a club, we're set up like a think tank, and we style ourselves as a community-based think tank.
So is ICS, is your organization actually leading the operational aspects of this law, or are you, who's taking the lead?
State Department is leading it. We as a diaspora organization will be leading of the observation and the pushing and the advocacy on the implementation. We have no budget to lead an implementation. The Department report is very focused. It only has a few points. It had to be, I think, 5 pages. And so that, for example, in agriculture, their report says they will engage with food technology and food safety. Our statement on agriculture is much broader. Our statement says agriculture is an underpinning sector for Caribbean growth and development, and we want to see increases in teacher exchanges, faculty exchanges. We want to see increase in research and development partnerships. What does that mean? For us, that means that when you look at the way the U.S. budget, whether it's USDA, whether it's State Department, is looking at food security, most of their work has been focused on food security in Asia and Africa. As a result, the private sector and the private funding agencies and financial institutions have not put any financing. There's no buzz around Caribbean agriculture. So when you look at agri-finance companies and agri-finance conferences, the Caribbean is not even a blip on the screen. So we did not limit our vision statement to a 3-year strategic engagement. We have designed our position paper as a vision/tactical paper around what needs to happen if we're to have a sustainable, inclusive society by 2030. So for us, agriculture, for example, when we say we want to see research and development exchanges, we're looking at how can we ensure the National Science Foundation and the USDA that does have funding for foreign agricultural services and those other things can be, let's say, impelled or pushed to put some budget aside for Caribbean agriculture. So we have a lot of work to do, especially as State Department only says food safety and food technology. So if we have to go start there and say, okay, if State Department says food safety and food technology, then we want the U.S. government agencies responsible for that to at least be aware of what we need in the region and support us in technical exchanges, technical assistance, and those things we need to make sure we meet the standards that they might have for our import and exports to reach the U.S.
Are you satisfied with what the State Department is doing and taking the lead and getting this bill operationalized?
Well, they've just started, so we're satisfied. We feel our partnership and the way in which we've engaged since January demonstrates mutual respect and mutual benefit. Of course, they're hampered by a budget constraint. The fact is, the Trump administration put forward a very limited budget for all U.S. foreign engagement. His administration is focused on a very inward-looking United States. The Congress, however, have put forward a much higher budget, I think $57.7 billion budget for USAID. There's this tension between defense versus development. Everybody in defense understands if we're not investing in peacemaking, we're investing in buying bullets. And so in the Washington parlance, most of the NGOs focused on a safe and secure United States are also focused on ensuring that the U.S. foreign policy agenda, as perpetuated through State Department and AID, is not cut back. So there's been a high, very active lobby, not just for ISIS, across the region. Now, of course, the Caribbean is not considered a problem region, so we have to now advocate within that there is ample budget put for the Caribbean. So we're happy that we have friends like Congressman Engel and Congressman Ross listening, who basically were the architects of the original bill.
Okay, now I understand that congressperson is leaving Congress.
She's leaving, so no doubt I don't know who's going to be named as a ranking member. No, she's leaving at the end of this Congress. We don't know if the Congress is going to turn or if it remain a Republican Congress in 2019 and 20. So of course, for right now we have, let's say, 18 months to see what we can get done, how we can get started, and already the conversations have begun about implementation. So that's what we are focusing right now as on ensuring that there is a standard protocol for diaspora engagement.
I have a question on, you have a designation with the White House. What was that designation you had?
I am a White House champion of change.
Okay.
So that was in the Obama administration era. He honored several Americans over the course of his 8 years who are recognized for contributing to the well-being and welfare of the American public space, I guess. And my award came as a result of U.S. State Department putting my name forward for my contributions both to the Caribbean diaspora. What most people don't know also, I was very much in the leadership of the conversation on racial inclusion across the Americas. So I have worked with communities of African descent from Argentina to, Canada.
So even though you were appointed in the Obama administration, does that carry forward to Trump? You're still a White House?
What is the title you have? Okay. I'm not going to, I mean, nobody, other, Trump obviously doesn't care about that, but I still consider it an honor that I was recognized for my work, both in my professional life and in my community life.
We're going to talk more about the conference, but you're the head of another organization,
The Futures Forum. Yeah, the Futures Forum is a space I have designed to help bring communities a more diverse perspective on the future. Let's say that to the futures community. Futures community of futurists tend to be largely white and male. And so if you look at most of the organizations, whether it's the World Future Study Federation or the World Future Society, there are very few people of color and from developing countries in that space. You have quite a few people from Australia, Singapore, and we have one or two organizations that do this kind of work in India and Africa. But by and large, the space of world futuring, if you will, is dominated by the traditional European and Canadian and white powers. So once I became a futurist, I thought it would be very important to have a space where I could begin to identify people who think like futurists, maybe sort of call themselves futurists, and begin to create an opportunity for us to share and be more visible in talking about how the global future might emerge, either as a global system or as well as technology-bound system. We have so many brilliant scientists of African descent or Asian descent whose voices are not heard in the conversation about what might emerge. So what is the future of work, the future of artificial intelligence, the future of, whatever. The goal of the Futures Forum is to, number one, provide a diverse viewpoint on how the future might emerge, and two, we consult, so we speak at conferences and at companies, but we also do consulting for companies who might want a different perspective on how the future might emerge for their company and help them actually build the ladders to get there.
How does your engineering background contribute to
It's major, because I'm an industrial engineer. It's like when I fell into the futures role of future society, I thought it was like, oh my God, I'm in heaven. Because as an IE industrial engineer, I've been basically trained to think system level. And that was my natural bent in high school. I always was worried about the system as a whole, how did it function effectively. And then because I work in international development, I've been used to doing programs and projects not just for the national loans or national development agenda, but I've also done a lot of work around regional programming. So I've done a lot of projects that have talked about the future of CARICOM trade or the future of CARICOM justice reform. So I'm used to thinking at a very big level about how does this system work. And so my IE training, people say, well, how did IE help you do that? Well, IEs are taught to think about systems, people, processes, products, protocols, policies. And so it was a perfect fit, if you will, for the design of the kind of systems that we're talking about, which are, which people tend to cut off into silos, but in fact, which ought to be treated like systems. So as a futurist looking at development futures, global futures, I think my IE training stands me in good stead. And because I'm a storyteller, I'm used to making up stuff anyway. And futures use a lot of scenario planning. It's very easy for me to storyfy a very technical document. So I can take a very technical, dry, academic thing about numbers and turn it into a story that will make people hear differently. And as we all know, research has shown that storytelling and storifying data makes people learn and absorb it easier and retain it longer. So this is why I think my skill sets kind of dovetail very nicely into the work I do as a futurist and a sustainability engineer.
And now that I want to get into the strategic alignment between that role and the conference. The conference.
Well, exactly. It fits in because, for example, so when State Department was doing the Celestic HR 499, it would have been no point for us to convene diaspora people who have no budget and no power to make something happen tomorrow and have us adopting what should happen in the next 3 years. I think it was very important for us to use the opportunity as diaspora, what I use as the opportunity for the diaspora to first of all recognize there is something called the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. If you don't work in the space the way I do, you're not aware of these, let's say, global factors that can pull us in a certain direction. The fact is Jamaica in particular is one of the first countries to have a 2030 vision statement, and in fact our 2030 vision statement predates the SDGs. So for me, this conference would have, and I think could have, been stronger had it allowed whomever is presenting from the government side to include a particular reference to 2030 so we can begin to have the diaspora think strategically about how they're engaging. Now, be mindful of the fact that most of us are volunteers. We're not paid to do this, and we're doing it from a personal passion, but we're not trained in development practice. We have a lot of, let's say, education and intentional awareness building to do. And so I have found it has always been a challenge for me to try to get the official diaspora leaders, because I'm just an unofficial diaspora leader, meaning that I'm not on anybody's advisory board. But it's been very challenging for me to get the diaspora leaders to understand the need for us as diaspora to have an engagement within ourselves, a participatory vision and exercise. I was like, this is what Jamaica Vision 2030 says, this is what we would like to do, but realistically, given that this is not our paid job, what will we actually do and how does it plug in to the systemic shift we want to see happen?
Okay, so now, how many sessions have you attended?
I've attended most. I think I did one on agriculture, I did one on nutraceuticals and medicinal marijuana. The day before, it was yesterday, I think on Monday, I was here in the afternoon, I forget what they covered, but I was at the afternoon sessions.
And so what was the most compelling session?
So far for me, again, it's hard for me to say because I've really been steeped in this. It's not like I'm coming to this. We do conferences twice a year, so it's nothing has been new to me. I would say in terms of what we are working on right now, the nutraceutical was very interesting because our conference in November, we'll be looking at that issue. So that was particularly important to get these new names and make these new connections and see what are their current needs. But because we recognize as a U.S. engagement, if it's not, can't be tied to what the U.S. is going to fund, you know, we have to figure out other ways of getting this information out to, let's say, the U.S. private sector, and hopefully, because our document is approved by State Department, I would say approved is the wrong word, that they actually like our document, that they will, if somebody asks them a question, they will say, oh yes, these people are, you know, great to work with, which is what we're aiming for.
I wanted to also mention that, did you attend the Economic Growth Council session?
No, I didn't actually, but I've heard Mr. Lichin speak before. I was here. I actually organized a session earlier this year in Jamaica on corporate social responsibility and metrics around corporate social responsibility, because I've been trying, I would say unsuccessfully, to get together a working group around the social stock exchange, as well as corporate social responsibility and a social development investment fund. That has not really gone anywhere. We've been talking about this since like 2011. So I feel some frustration in that regard, and I feel some concerns because when I hear the words like gentrification being tossed about as the gentrification of Jamaica, it makes me very nervous because that's a bad word in Washington, D.C. and in the United States. Gentrification is about displacing traditionally underprivileged, undervalued, under-empowered communities for more privileged peoples. And so when you're bandying that word about in Jamaica, as if to say it's a great thing, it really makes me frightened because it's like I feel, does it really signify a move towards inclusive growth, inclusive prosperity, or are we reverting to a greater gap between the haves and the have-nots? And inequality is a huge reason for the level of crime and criminality in this country. And so we have to be really mindful of the signals we're sending when we use words like that, which are very loaded words.
Well, are you familiar with the Economic Growth Council's agenda and the 8 recommendations that on that agenda? Are you familiar?
I have sat in on a few calls. I can't say I'm fully cognizant, but as I said, once I heard the word gentrification used in January, and I attended that first meeting, one of those early meetings in January, I sort of kind of pulled back because I felt it was going to be more of the same. I am looking at the new economy agenda. I am interested in how do we look at the realities around the changing paradigms in how economies run. I find to design a Jamaican future based on old economic paradigms is a slip back. I am focused on why is our university not getting our young thinkers to think about the fact that if our main goods and services of the 21st century is knowledge and information that travels at the speed of light, why are we still perpetuating an economic growth based on a Newtonian idea of time and space? I mean, the fact is, if the companies that are the largest companies are selling ideas, Google, Twitter, they employ what, 100 people or 1,000 people, and they're billion dollars. So why are we then predicating our design of growth based on old ideas? That said, how can we ensure that there's a modern mix then, that we have this, we really internalize at the private sector level? When I ask private sector people here in Jamaica, when I've asked them in the past, does the private sector have a separate document about the future of manufacturing in Jamaica 2030 or the future of agriculture 2030? They don't have that. So if you are not doing your own homework, you see, how is technology, how is changing in demand, how is climate change going to impact even, let's say, on water quality and therefore impact on your food in 10 years, what are you really trying to do? So I have a lot of, I would say, impatience, because having organized as well in Jamaica in 2015 a Futures Forum and not seen any traction from that. Unlike many other people, because I've done so much here on the ground, I have a higher level of expectation perhaps, so my frustrations tend to be higher than the average person.
Okay, so essentially what you're saying, I want to put it in a synopsis and say that first world countries are driven by knowledge-based disciplines.
Yes.
And that's essentially where we ideally like to see Jamaica to be competitive at first world levels, and that is actually the Vision 2030 objective.
Yes.
So with that being the gap that needs to be filled, how do you, as a futurist, how would you go about structurally implementing this type of necessity?
Given that, first of all, my meetings with the University of West Indies to institute a futures program to teach strategic foresight have fallen on deaf ears so far. I've met with mine, that's fallen on deaf ears. I've met with PLG, that's fallen on deaf ears. My current strategy as to what I can control, because again, I can't control that, is I am going to be working with a primary school that my mother used to be the principal of. And the principal is interested in finding out how can he teach young people critical thinking skills about the future. So our intention is to use the curriculum from a group in Florida called Future Problem Solving International, which has curriculum for elementary school to high school to young professionals, to help them think about future problems and teach them how to solve them. That is something I can do to kind of quench my frustration level a little bit. Meanwhile, I'm continuing to hope and pray that I meet somebody that lives here, that has leadership influence here, that will go like, wow, we're willing to do this approach, where we have these brain trusts created around sectors. So let's say we have an agriculture sort of brain trust on the future of agriculture. So you would have your private sector people, your academicians, your technology people, your finance people coming to a huddle for say a 90-day period, and every Friday they'll be released from their job, they come into a huddle somewhere, and they're doing these scenario games, simulation games, bring together the collective knowledge, looking at the problem systematically together, not agriculture over here and you have a committee when they're just reporting on what that is not the way new knowledge and innovations are spurred. So this is why the Googles and the Disneys of this world, even their compounds are set up to generate dynamic interaction. If you go into Disney Corporation headquarters, I was there the other day, I was like, wow, it's like you're in like a retreat. You know, the way they use their gardens for people to have meetings, they have, very artistically designed spaces because it's a creative company. If we say we want an innovation economy, we have got to allow our smallness to be a driver. There's a speech I once did as Jamaica as a driver of change, and it had talked about scenarios of the future where we have created product blending replicators of Usain Bolt's running style with gaming to create a new product, which is basically blowing the water out of the gaming industry because we have this new game. So when you do that and you say, my God, this is really, could really happen, and I can't find somewhere to kind of deposit this stuff or work this stuff, it becomes like your ideas are actually weighting you down. So for me as an ideation person, I have to say it's sometimes challenging, and I am trying to learn how to not let my ideas and lack of them being able to flow out and manifest because I don't control that depress me.
Well, this forum, this conference, is this not an ideal forum for you?
No, because it's not, none of the sessions are designed for participatory engagement. It's a talking to approach with a few question and answer. That's not a participatory engagement.
So
I would have, if I had been involved in the design process, some of those sessions which are considered working groups, I would have designed them as real working groups where people are given exercises to do, even though it's only an hour and a half. You can still get a lot done if you design the process a particular way. But people are so bound to the traditional ways of a panel and you have question and answer that they think that's the way to always design something. So we're designing something on 20th century design, meeting design styles, when we're trying to do something very new and different.
what constructive, well, I mean, can you offer more of the constructive?
Yeah, so
let's
say in the mornings they had what they have, the plenaries, I like those, and then you go now. So now we're gonna have a thing tonight or today, 4 engagement sessions, right? Small group sessions. And we're supposed to come up with like actionable items. We have actionable items, and we even had 1.5 hours or 2 hours today to do this group huddle where you have a facilitator, people who come into a room, and then have 80 people in a room. So you do a more town hall style meeting. You have 8 tables of 10, for example, and people are assigned questions and answers. They're told how to address them, what format to use, because you don't have a long time to make it very, very open. You would at least get more people participating dynamically. Then that would then be reported back, and then now you have a different engagement. And also, I would have had more participation from the civil society actors who are also our partners on the ground. We as Diaspora must find civil society actors, whether it be private sector or NGOs, that match up with our needs. So in my case, I've tried to work with Junior Achievement. We have funded many programs with Junior Achievement in the last 6 years because, again, that organization was structured and we could just give them as a here, work with that school. Now we're going to be much more strategic and say we want to create a center at this primary school. We have a principal that's ready to be an experiment for anything. And so anybody who wants to experiment at that level, here's a school that's open to experimentation. And he says, if you want to train our teachers, we'll do that. Whatever you want, I want my school to be a lighthouse for transformational learning. So we, all of us, whether you're working in agriculture, working in healthcare, we must have a local partner, because this flying in and flying out, it's not working for us. We need to go beyond that. So I would like to see more official matchmaking sessions, just like we do for business matchmaking, social enterprise matchmaking sessions. That says, hey, I'm a medical mission, I'm looking for a medical foundation on the ground that can help us move from flying in and flying out to do medical missions. So, okay, we're going to focus on St. Mary healthcare system for the next 3 years. So we see a sea change in St. Mary healthcare system. Look, you're flying and you do. If you, oh my God, I've treated 100 people, what to do? It's nice, but where's the development investment? That's a charity gift. And I'm saying, after 55 years of doing charity, we need to grow up. We're now 55, we're mature, we're senior citizens, or at least approaching that. We need to go up and change our modality and move towards investment, which means we need to change the way we organize.
Well, Dr. Nelson, it's been great. It has been a wealth of information that you've given us. I just want to thank you and congratulate you for all the work that you've done in the diaspora. The establishment of Caribbean Heritage Month in June was a great accomplishment.
I think so. And actually it's really is the foundation of how we move forward.
And I certainly am very, very proud, you know, of what you did.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on the Jamaica Diaspora Show. There's more of the conference left.
Yes, I fully intend to enjoy it. Right. This is a youth forum, and I'm looking forward to that. One of our proteges is a member of the youth, you know, Jamaica. She's based in the UK. Former Miss Jamaica, Gina Hargitay. She's our ambassador for Ignite Caribbean, which is a youth space we have designed to help young people who want to get hurt but get locked out. And they said, look, Dr. Nelson wanted to do something. So I said, there's a platform, and we have opened doors to the status quo, whether it's the World Bank, IDB, all the places where we have influence. We try to help push them into those spaces.
Well, and I hope to be able to have the time to enjoy some of the conference with you. So yes. Thanks again for being on.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the idea of having the show, and best of luck with that.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the Jamaica Diaspora Show, and we'll be back next week with more coverage on diaspora news and activities. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.